Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be doing a little bit of a side quest. So, in the middle of me doing a bunch of Road to 1.0s where I test characters and push them to Empowered to test a bunch of season starters for 1.0, I had an idea. So, the node inside Avalanche, the Coldstone Elemental node, I was thinking about it more and more, and I wanted to take another crack at it to see if it functioned because I've tried it before in the past and it was like meh, it was pretty bad, but I tried it again and I actually saw some potential. So I decided to gear the character more and we're having a pretty good time all the way up until we hit like 240 corruption and Rae started one tapping all of my coldstone elementals. And after a bunch of digging and work and effort, we finally figured out that the attunement scaling, the base attribute scaling for the Coldstone Elementals do not currently function. That means that all that flat health that they would get, the 4 flat health per attunement, which would allow you to multiply that with the base health and the percent health and all that, that would make them much tankier than they currently are right now, and that would make them tanky enough to actually not die instantly, right? But before I get too ahead of myself, let's talk about how this build functions. So right now, we're utilizing Avalanche to create a bunch of Coldstone Elementals. There's a 9% chance that a Boulder turns into a Coldstone Elemental, which then, of course, they all, can punch enemies and deal melee cold damage and melee physical damage. Now, these minions are pretty meh. They don't have a tree, so they get no more damage from their tree. They get no like more health from their tree. They don't get anything special from their tree. But thankfully, Primalist has a few options of scaling them, specifically with Aeolia's Path. With Aeolia's Path, we can get a very large amount of melee necrotic flat for our minions, up to currently, I think we're at like 40 flat necrotic flat for our minions, and that's a decent amount because normal minions they go to like 20 flat for their base damage for the most part. Like that's usually the average. So we're essentially like quadrupling their damage just by using Yulia's Path, which is enough to bring them to a respectable amount. And then, of course, we also have a lot of support for crit, for minion melee crit, unironically. That is because of the Avix added minion melee crit on Primaless body armor. This, on top of all the percent crit that we can get from our Durila's Obsessions, our War Cry, right? And of course, we also get another 8% base crit from utilizing the Spriggan Pet, which, by the way, doesn't completely flounder thanks to some things we'll talk about later. But essentially, all of this investment into crit means that we can actually get to almost crit cap with our golems. Now, I just want to let you guys know as well, I haven't really invested too much into this build in terms of like the damage. So, like for instance, we're only at 200% base critical strike multiplier with some minion critical strike multiplier on gear. We can get to like 50% on our body armor and like another 50% on our helmet. And that would give us like about 50% more damage right there. I also don't have an Apogee of the Cold Frozen Light. That with minion melee percent damage would also be around like 40% more damage. So we could very easily have like double to triple the amount of damage that we currently have, especially when attunement starts working and we can get that juicy 300% increased damage that we're supposed to have that we don't have because, attunement scaling is bugged for the minions, which means that like this is actually somewhat of a not terrible build. And of course, thanks to all of the leech on the tree, we can get an insane amount of minion melee leech thanks to the fact that we're a primalist, like I said, on all the affixes, on everything, right? We can get a really ridiculous amount of leech, which means that the degen that the Coldstone Elementals have, which is the kind of counteracting the ability to summon as many as you want, is of course the degen, kind of like wraiths, right? With this much leech, they essentially keep themselves alive very easily, right? And that's really good because it turns out we can get a lot of cold stone elementals. So on a singular target, on like the dummy, we can get to like 60 before their degen starts overpowering them. But in boss situations, we're only about at like 20 most of the time. Mainly because, like I said, they're much squishier because, we don't have any attunement scaling. To put it in perspective, right now in the footage that you're watching, I have well over like 1300% minion increased life. That is a lot of increased life. But right now, they only have about like 1,600, I think, or something like that, base health. It's something like that, 1,600 maybe. And that with 1,300% increase, that's only like about like maybe like 10,000 to 15,000 health. That's not very much. But of course, with attunement scaling, we can very easily get like 50% to 75% more HP when, attunement actually works, which would be enough to make them tanky enough for most content and around 300 corruption, which is what I'm aiming for them. Now, of course, like I said, without the with the bug, it makes it really hard to actually play these. So I would suggest not playing this build until like the bug is fixed. Hopefully one day the devs are aware of the bug, thankfully. So hopefully one day we'll get them fixed, and hopefully they kind of like rework them slightly and give them like an actual like part of their own tree. If you don't know, Avalanche is like one of the oldest skills in the entire game. So it's completely okay for these random one-shot minions to not deal enough damage or be tanky enough to do content that was made recently about a year ago, right? Or whenever Empowered Monolith was made. The fact that I have been able to make a minion that has essentially no more damage multipliers, right? No more health multipliers, and no attribute scaling. The fact that I could even get them to the point where they could kill uh, like bosses in the empowered monolith system, right? The fact I can even clear monoliths is just absolutely astounding to me. Thankfully, with like I said, Yulia's path, and of course all this crit chance, it means our minions can actually do damage, which is great, right? Now, another thing that we're implementing onto this build is, of course, Spriggan form. So, I mean, well, not Spriggan form, summon Spriggan. So, summon Spriggan with the specifically, there's one interaction that makes it really good. So, there's a node inside Swipe, right? Which makes it so that whenever you use it, you heal your nearest companion to full, which is your Spriggan, which is one of the main reasons why Spriggan dies all the time is they don't have enough sustain because they don't have enough tankiness, right? So we heal it to full every single time we swipe every 2 seconds, which is insane, right? And we also trigger its companion ability, which also gives us a bunch of healing, and that minion healing is scaled by our attunement, right? Once we actually are allowed to scale attunement, our healing scales significantly with our attunement thanks to Spriggan form, right? I mean Spriggan companion. The Spriggan companion is actually somewhat tanky. Now it will die every so often, of course, in the worst situations, but that's also as well because I haven't been able to attunement stack for my Spriggan pet, right? Because the attunement doesn't work for my Coldstone elementals, so I haven't put any investment into attunement to make my Spriggan pet actually tanky. So eventually, one day, when the devs finally get around to fixing this random one-off skill, right? Like random one-off minion, right? Once they fix that, we can actually play Coldstone Elementals. Now, of course, it's funny. Someone in chat pointed out that we could actually call these minty fresh golems, like mint ice cream Coldstone Elementals. If you don't know, Coldstone is a company that serves ice cream, and of course, with the Yulia's boots, we have that greenish, maelstrom, which of course, kind of looks like mint ice cream. So we got mint ice cream elementals, which is very amusing, right? But yeah, overall, what has this taught me? What has playing this build taught me? It has taught me that inherent attribute bonuses, the flat health scaling on attributes, are absolutely necessary to make minions function in the end game. Without that attribute scaling, right, the flat HP per, your multiplicative percent minion HP is not enough to keep them alive. Another thing, I think that minions still take way too much damage from specifically telegraphed attacks. So we can dodge the telegraph's attacks most of the time, right? But our minions can't really dodge the telegraphed attacks, especially telegraphed attacks that are dot. Like they just absolutely rip and tear into minions. And like this entire experience has taught me that maybe EHG could maybe loosen up a little bit in terms of how much damage minions take. Specifically, at least like ones like these cold stone elementals, because they take way too much damage. One of the reasons why this build failed in the first place, at least, so like I tried this build twice in a row. I tried it the other day and I got frustrated after spending a day on it and watching Riot completely one tap all my minions in one wave, right? And I also, of course, tried it again after I realized that I was utilizing Death Rattle, and Death Rattle makes minions take increased damage, which of course would make my minions die. Now, of course, if that inherent attunement scaling was not bugged, the Death Rattle would be an insane damage multiplier for our minions, right? And our minions wouldn't instantly die too, because like we have enough HP at that point with the inherent attunement scaling. So we have a lot of options once these things actually scale like they're supposed to. Well, with all that being said, I'm not going to make a full guide on this. I'm going to leave a planner down below, but please, for the love of God, don't play this build, at least until the bug is fixed. And of course, by then, I'll have an update for you guys. With all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go do something else. Hopefully, something that will help my sanity. Bye.